The storm outside the cafe had been raging for hours, but it was nothing compared to the storm that was about to begin inside. The moment he stepped through the glass doors, soaked coat, heavy footsteps, eyes tired in a way that money could never fix, the entire room shifted. People looked up, whispers rose. The soft jazz music seemed to pause mid-note. Everyone recognized him from billboards, magazine covers, and news headlines. Marcus Hale, the 38-year-old tech titan who built a global empire from nothing, the millionaire CEO rumored to be on the brink of closing the biggest acquisition of his career, a $200 million merger that would make his company untouchable. Yet here he was, standing in a tiny roadside cafe on the outskirts of town, on a night so stormy most travelers had chosen to stay home. But not him, and not the person who was about to change his life forever. Because within minutes, a trembling new waitress would walk up to him, heart pounding, apron strings shaking, and say the words that would stop history in its tracks. "You need to leave, sir. Before the story continues, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that small moments can change everything." Her name was Aria Lane, and she had started this job only 3 days earlier. To her, the world was not headlines and deals, but overdue rent notices, a leaking kitchen roof, and the gnawing guilt of leaving her younger brother home alone again, just to earn enough to keep them both afloat. She didn't know who Marcus Hale was. She didn't follow business news or trending billionaires. All she knew was that her feet ached, the register didn't balance, and if she messed up one more order, her manager would have every reason to let her go. Her life was already balancing on a thread thinner than the crack climbing the cafe's window frame, and tonight, she felt it would snap. Marcus chose the corner booth farthest from everyone, not caring that the lights above it flickered. He slid into the seat and exhaled like it was the first breath he'd taken all week. His phone buzzed relentlessly, reminders flashing across the screen about tomorrow's merger meeting, back-to-back interviews, and the high-stakes negotiations waiting for him at dawn. Yet beneath all the noise was a quiet, suffocating pressure he had grown too good at hiding. His father, his mentor, his anchor, had been rushed to the hospital earlier that evening. Surgery, complications, no guarantees. The weight of not knowing hovered over him like a shadow. He had driven until the storm forced him to pull over, and the only open place for miles had been this old cafe with flickering lights and chipped tables. For the first time in years, he wished desperately not to be recognized, not to be Marcus Hale, CEO of Hale Dynamics, but just a tired son praying for his father's life. Aria watched him from the counter. She could sense something off, the way his shoulders slumped, the distracted way he ran his fingers across the table, the hollow look in his eyes. She grabbed a menu with shaky hands and approached his booth. Just as she was about to greet him, 2 other customers waved frantically for service, throwing rude comments about the slow staff. Her manager glared at her from the kitchen door, silently urging her to hurry. She apologized quickly and dashed away, leaving Marcus sitting alone in a silence that seemed heavier than before. Minutes passed. The storm howled louder. The cafe lights flickered again. The smell of burnt onions drifted from the kitchen. Marcus leaned back, his eyes drifting toward the window, watching the lightning flash across the sky. He thought about turning his phone off, about disappearing for a night, about escaping the relentless world he had built. But he couldn't. Not when so many people depended on him. Not when a $200 million deal hinged on his ability to appear calm, confident, unstoppable. When Aria finally returned to his table, she could tell he hadn't even opened the menu. She apologized breathlessly for the wait, but he shook his head faintly, assuring her it was fine. She realized then that he really wasn't like the usual impatient customers. There was a worn gentleness in him, like someone who had been fighting battles silently for far too long. She took his order and hurried back to the kitchen. Minutes later, the cafe door slammed open with a gust of freezing wind. A group of loud, intoxicated men stumbled in, dripping rainwater and smelling of cheap alcohol. They slurred jokes and bumped into tables, causing several customers to flinch. Arya felt her stomach twist. The night was about to get much worse. The men seated themselves near Marcus, laughing loudly at nothing. One of them recognized him instantly and nudged his friends. Phone cameras came out, voices rose, questions flew at him like darts. About his money, about his companies, about rumors and scandals. Marcus clenched his jaw but said nothing. His father's condition was weighing on him too heavily to entertain drunken strangers. The situation escalated fast. One man shoved a phone inches from Marcus's face, demanding a photo. Another made a snide comment about his father's illness, something leaked by journalists earlier that day. Marcus's expression changed then. His eyes darkened. His breathing tightened. The storm outside had nothing on the one brewing behind his silence. Arya saw everything from across the room. Panic shot through her. Her manager was nowhere in sight, probably hiding in the kitchen like he always did when trouble arrived. The other customers pretended not to notice. Arya swallowed hard, wiped her sweaty hands on her apron, and forced her shaking legs to move. She stepped between Marcus and the group, her heart thundering so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She didn't raise her voice or make a scene. She simply said with a trembling firmness, "You need to leave, sir." The words flew out before she fully understood the consequences. The men laughed, but she wasn't talking to them. She was talking to Marcus, the one who needed rescuing more than anyone realized. In her mind, she was helping a distressed customer escape harassment. She had no idea she was asking the country's most powerful CEO to leave a public space just minutes before he was scheduled to receive a confidential call that would finalize his $200 million deal. A call he absolutely could not miss. A call he would now have to take somewhere else, in a storm, with a dying father and a collapsing emotional state. Her voice cracked as she repeated herself, but she didn't step back. She felt something instinctual, protective, rising in her chest. She knew fear. She knew anxiety. She knew what it looked like when someone was about to break. And the man sitting in that booth, with all his wealth and fame, looked like he was breaking. Marcus slowly rose to his feet. He studied her face, the sincerity trembling behind her eyes, the courage she didn't even realize she possessed. No one had intervened for him in years. No one had looked at him like a human being instead of a machine built for profit and decisions. For a moment, he forgot the storm, the deal, the screens full of numbers. All he saw was a young woman risking her job to protect a stranger. He left without protest. Arya exhaled shakily as he stepped outside. The men jeered and complained, but eventually settled down. The cafe's tension dropped, though her own heart didn't. She felt guilt stabbing her. Had she embarrassed the man? Had she overstepped? Would her manager overhear and fire her for causing trouble? She didn't know. All she knew was that the night suddenly felt colder. Outside, Marcus stood under the cafe awning, battling the storm and his emotions while waiting for his car service to arrive. His phone buzzed again, 20 missed calls, urgent texts from his board members, updates from the hospital. He stared at the screen blankly, feeling the walls close in. And then the call came. The call that would finalize the $200 million deal. He answered in the rain, the storm drowning half the conversation, but somehow his voice remained steady. He agreed to the terms, negotiated the final clauses, and secured the entire deal while water dripped from his hair and thunder cracked above him. When the call ended, he closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer, more for his father than for the deal. The car arrived. He got in, but he didn't leave. Instead, he watched Arya through the cafe window, She was wiping tables again, shoulders slumped, exhaustion practically radiating from her. She had protected him without knowing who he was. She had stepped into conflict alone, afraid, but firm. Something inside him shifted. The next morning, Marcus walked into the hospital with 2 victories, the merger completed, and the news that his father had survived surgery. The relief washed over him in a way he had never known. He cried silently in the hallway, years of pressure dissolving into the sterile white air. His father woke hours later, frail but smiling. And in that moment, Marcus vowed he would start living differently. He was tired of being feared, tired of being untouchable, tired of everyone treating him like a walking bank instead of a human being. He remembered the waitress, the girl with trembling hands and too much courage, the only person who had treated him like a man in need rather than a CEO with power. 2 days later, the cafe door opened again. This time, the storm was gone. Marcus entered wearing a simple jacket, not a billionaire's armor of perfection. He looked around until he saw her. Aria froze mid-step, not recognizing him immediately. When she did, her heart dropped. She expected anger, complaints, maybe even legal trouble. She braced herself for the worst. But instead, Marcus walked up to her and thanked her, genuinely and deeply. He told her she had given him something priceless that night: humanity. She blinked in confusion. In her world, she had done nothing but try to prevent a conflict. But in his world, she had done what nobody else ever dared. He asked about her life. At first she hesitated, but slowly the truth spilled out. Her struggling finances, her brother, her fear of losing this job, her dreams she had buried long ago. Marcus listened without interrupting, absorbing every word. What happened next would turn her entire life upside down. Marcus offered her a position at his company, not because she needed charity, but because she had qualities he valued more than any resume could show: courage, empathy, integrity. She tried to refuse, overwhelmed and uncertain, but he insisted. Not as a billionaire doing a good deed, but as a man who believed her potential deserved to be seen. In the months that followed, Aria's world transformed. She received training, mentorship, a stable salary, and a workplace where her voice mattered. Her brother received medical care and educational support through Marcus's private foundation. Their home was repaired. Their nights were peaceful. And Aria, the girl who once wiped tables under flickering lights, began rebuilding her dreams one confident step at a time. As for Marcus, he changed too. He became the CEO who walked floors, who listened, who remembered that kindness was not weakness, but power. His employees noticed. The world noticed. And it all began because a terrified waitress had stood between him and his breaking point and told him to leave before the storm swallowed him whole. If this story touched your heart, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe so more people can hear stories of kindness and unexpected miracles. Before the ending, here's a special request. Comment below what moment in the story moved you the most. And so, the millionaire who once felt alone in the world found hope in the courage of a stranger, and the waitress who once feared losing everything gained a future brighter than she ever imagined. Sometimes, the smallest acts of bravery ripple into life-changing miracles. Sometimes a quiet voice saying, "You need to leave, sir," becomes the turning point in 2 lives meant to cross paths at exactly the right moment.